In this first video on data preparation for forecasting, we're going to talk about going from integers to time value indexes and dummy variables, and also deal with getting our future period placeholders in place so that we can complete our forecasts. When we're doing forecasting, we need to do a series of data manipulations to prepare our data, and it comes to us in different ways. One way data can come to us is it can come to us looking like this, where we see the year. You can see that these are set up as integer values. They're not the date with has the month, day, and year. It's just a year. And since this data came to us with just quarterly values, so we have quarters 1 through 4, and then we have the department store sales amounts. So this data in its current form is not useful for forecasting. We need to do some manipulations. First off, we need to get our time in linear time. And so we can have quarter 1 through quarter whatever, and we don't want to just have quarters 1 through 4 and so forth. So we need to manipulate this information so that we get the passage of time in an increasing integer format that looks like this. Also, we need to get quarters in dummy variables. And so right now, since these are numeric values, we want the modeler to be able to treat the fourth quarter separately from the third quarter, separately from the second quarter, and so forth. And so what we want to do is we want to change this data so that it has a textual information or textual value in there, so that the modeler, when it's doing the fitting of the model, it will actually assume that these are categorical values in a categorical variable. So you can see up here that I've created a column called quarter category. It's just an easy way to remember that that's what these are. The other thing to note over here is that I have put in addition to the data that came with the problem, I have put in some other information in here. You can do that in Excel, or you can do that in an ASCII editor. So how do we get from the data from this format to this format? First thing we'll do is we'll open up this information and we will add in our 2015 information. And again, these are placeholders so that when we come to forecast new time, then we'll have what we need in here to be able to do that. So I'm putting in 2015 as a placeholder so that we'll have those 4 quarters, and then I'll just put zeros in here so that VisMiner does not think that these are empty or incomplete data. It was in a CSV file, so by saving it back down, then it will go back into the CSV value. Now that we have this sort of starting place data, we'll do the rest in VisMiner in terms of the data preparation. So now this data set has the 28 records, which is the 24 records that we started with, plus the 4 additional records that we put in as placeholders for the quarters that we're going to forecast sales values for. So now we need to add some information. We'll create a drive data set to do this, and we'll call it department store prepped. And we're going to include sales, but we're going to have to do some conversions on these values to make them useful. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create linear time. So quarter 1 will be the first, and then quarter 2 will be the second, and so forth, all the way up till we get run out of quarters. And so that will represent linear time. This is like the X value, or the X axis, that is going to be moving from left to right, so to speak. And then we'll see how sales goes up, the slope of sales goes up in terms of, as time progresses by an integer value of 1, how much will sales increase. You can think of it sort of as the slope that we're going to be calculating. So we'll create a new column here, and we'll call this one T for time. I like to use lowercase t's for time, and then Q2R. Just to help me remember that that's a time index as the quarters move through time. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the year, which happens to start off with the year 2009, and we will take 2009 and subtract that from it and multiply it by 4. So what will happen is the first year is 2009 in the data, minus the same 2009 will be 0, times 4 will be 0. And then we'll add to this quarter, which is a value of 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then what will happen is for the first year, for the first 4 records, Q2R or this value will be 1 through 4, and then for the second year, which will be 2010, 2010 minus 2009 will be 1. 1 times 4 will be 4, and then we'll add to that for the first quarter, Q2R will be 1, so that will be 5, and so forth, and this will go on up until we have the time index values for all of the data. So we'll create that. And then we'll also add a column where we need to make dummy variables out of Q2R for quarter. Right now, of course, this is just integers of 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if we put integers in for Q2R, then what will happen is instead of treating quarter as a category, then VisMiner will treat Q2R as a number, and it's not what we want to do. We want to treat it as a dummy variable, so we have to get a textual value in there. So an easy way to do that is just to append it. So if we put in a textual value of Q2R, and of course that's anything that we want to have in text, then we need to put in quotes, and then we'll put on that Q2R, which will be the value of whichever quarter it is. And we'll name this Q2R category. And that's just to help me remember that that's a categorical variable for the quarter, and then we'll create that. All right, so now we have these two that are going to be what we need along with sales, and now we create this. Now if we look at this in our data table viewer, then we'll see that now we have our index for time. That's our linear index for time. We also have our quarter category, which is now a textual value so that the VisMiner will be able to treat these as dummy variables. And then of course we have our sales down here, including the placeholders that we're going to be forecasting when we are ready to do our forecast. If we mouse over this, the notes will show us the sort of math we've used to be able to come up with our column. So VisMiner sort of like documents as you go what you've done. And so now we're no longer going to use this. This data is in a prepped state so that we can do that. So now we'll save this as a data set, and now we have our department store prepped, and we no longer need to have this on our viewer, so we can close that data set, and we can reorganize the data set and move this over to the left. So that's how we do the data preparation when we are working with integer values for things like years and quarters.